Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today I'm in conversation with Moffat Takadiwa, a contemporary visual artist. If you enjoy this conversation, remember to subscribe, like, and share. Let's get down to some business. Moffat Takadiwa, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you. I'm happy to be on this platform.
You know, Moffat, I've had presidents, people who aspire to be presidents sitting on that chair. But your story just is something else. I'm even staggering to get the right words. You are such an inspiration. Your story is authentic. It is original. I'm excited to share your story with the viewers out there. And I must, for the viewers to understand who you are, I must ask you this question. What do you do? What does your work involve? Let's start it there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. My work involves everyday refuse. So I'm more of a garbage collector, maybe. I work with everyday refuse to reflect on everyday lives of mostly Zimbabwean people and tell a Zimbabwean story through these objects.
Yeah. Now, what made you start doing this work? It's such an unusual work to collect what people throw away and use to create art. Talk to us about that. What made you do it?
At first, when I was still studying art, I studied at Harare Polytechnic College. Around the year 2006, 2007, up to 2008, you realize that was more like a very tough time for the country. And it was difficult for any student to find traditional art materials. So somehow we ended up looking for something else which we can use to produce work and submit assignments. So that was the first, I think, thing which pushed me into these materials.
Wow. So instead of, because I think the way some people would have reacted is, there's no material.
Yes.
So I'm going to do something else. There is no material. I can't do the work. But you say to yourself, there is no material, but there's garbage. People are throwing away stuff. I'm going to use that stuff. And I must still ask, where did that come from? Where did that idea come from?
I would say later on in my practice, when you're reflecting back, I also realized, when I grew up in a small town in Karoi, in the farming areas, small town called Tengo, actually. So my father worked in a supermarket. And I grew up maybe surrounded by these objects, consumables. So I think maybe the love for objects goes way back to, when I was young. My father actually worked for almost 35 years in a supermarket. So my whole entire maybe young teenage life was surrounded by these objects. So there was that maybe subconscious love and appreciation for these objects and their maybe aesthetic look, design, color, and so. So there are many things maybe which comes into play when I think about what I use.
The other thing that really has made me fall in love with your work, and I've been kicking myself because until we started wanting to talk to you, I didn't know that you existed. But when I started looking at your work, my mind is blown away by what you're doing. So you've decided essentially that you find opportunity in a crisis. And I think for me, that's a big lesson for us out there. Because the tendency is, in a crisis, we fold, we wilt, we give up. But 2008, we're in a crisis. There isn't the material to work with. And you become this creative. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think that's the main, I'll say, crux around my work, is to give life to these materials which are lifeless. So maybe it talks into that, how I think art in general maybe thrive through difficult times. You see a lot of very successful artists. Normally they come from that kind of situation.
Because I think the beauty about you is you're authentic. You're not copying anybody, you're authentic. You're doing something that not many people do. And I just find that mind-blowing. And it takes somebody who appreciates art to look at your pieces and say, wow, this piece is about 200,000 US dollars. What's been the reaction of the public, Zimbabweans, to your work? Positive and negative?
To be honest with you, I think I was not on the radar in this country. I would say after, when I finished maybe studying at Harare Poly, I kind of founded a gallery. So with the other gallerists, it became quite problematic to them, and they didn't want maybe to show me. So for some time, I wasn't really shown in the country. And with this gallery which I founded, we had to find a market elsewhere. So it pushes me to really read, research, and understand how the art market works, how the global art world works. So I managed to get sort of international attention and recognition before being noticed even at home. And I would say the show which I have, which is happening now in Zimbabwe, is like my first show in a decade. In 10 years, this is my first time showing a body of work here in Zimbabwe. And the work was well received. I broke a lot of records for the gallery, for the National Gallery of Zimbabwe, since it was opened.
The work that's currently showing now, okay, which we're going to take a look around, yeah?
Yes, in the early 1950s, when the National Gallery was opened, they've never reached records as I've done.
Wow.
In the launch of the show...
What kind of records are you talking about? Attendance? Just break down the record for us.
From the launch of the show, the gallery received almost more than 1,000 people were packed in that gallery. People couldn't fit in the gallery. The whole Julius Nyerere, people couldn't find parking just to come and see my show. And you know, for a Zimbabwean audience, people sometimes hesitate to just walk in that gallery. But for my show, we had people who have never stepped their foot into that gallery. And during even the duration of the show, I was told they would have like 6-7 buses loaded with students, schools, coming to just see the show every day. Just in 2 weeks, when the show was opened, the curator, Father Mchemwesh, told me, like, we have already received more people than the entire last year. Just when the show was opened, you know. So this is very important for me when I'm received at home, because like any other artist, we put our people at the center of our practice. We communicate mostly to our people.
You put your people at the center of the practice.
Yes.
But until you were recognized outside, your people did not recognize you.
Yes.
You're saying your work was not being shown locally. Why were the other galleries not interested in showing your work?
I would say maybe it's like that in most industries. We have doorkeepers. I would call them that. You know, and sometimes people can easily make enemies with their competitors. I would say that because founded a gallery, and most people were not happy.
What's the name of your gallery, by the way?
The gallery which I co-founded
Yeah.
is still running. It's called Festival Gallery. Yeah, it's still running and still doing very well. But I left the gallery, I think, after 4 years of running it. And it's being run by other people and it's doing very well. Yes.
But what does that... Tell me your reaction to the way the public, Zimbabwean public, ignored your work. And now they're coming around to recognize it. Tell me what that, the kind of emotion that elicits from you.
You know, I was, during that time, I was working with other peers, fellow artists. So we were working as a collective. And I remember we used to tell each other that, guys, we just need to make the fire. Someone will see the smoke. That's exactly what we were telling each other. And we were saying, this is just a small, maybe, fish pond. We really want to swim in the ocean. So we started to really read about the global art market and understand it. And, you know, by that, you begin to understand that there's a bigger picture to this. And you also understand that a lot of people, they can strive, but they are not even in the mainstream market. They are in the parallel market. So we really wanted to be in the art market with my friends, and somehow I think we find a way, and we ended up being in the market. And by other people whom I was working with, I would say I realized that I was training actually a generation of artists. So I have like more than 10 to 15 artists whom I was working with, you know, inspiring, and we ended up all being almost successful.
Wow. My heart is going boom, boom as you're talking. I mean, I'm just excited. I like what you say. Let's make the fire. They will notice. Well, what would you say to artists, musicians, people who are hustling and struggling, that have gone through what you've gone through? What lessons do you think your experience offers? What message would you have for people that have been in the space that you've been? It can be an easy space to be in. What message do you have for them?
I would say, like, it's not easy. And sometimes there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, so they need to just follow their own path. Yes.
Keep focused. Let's go now to the I liked the phrase that's used. You work with found material. I think that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful phrase. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Let's go now to that found material. If you could just go through it, what material do you work with?
So I look at everyday refuse. These are from what we use as consumer objects and what we throw in the bin. So I have a small team outside the studio. People who go around, maybe garbage size. Most of them maybe used to be vagabonds, for lack of a better word. And I ended up, through many years, recruiting some of these people to build trust and work with me, to mobilize and look for certain items. Then they bring these items to my studio. In my studio, we prepare, we clean these materials.
Let's name these materials. What are they? These are, just name them.
From your everyday objects, I mean, like a toothbrush, for instance.
Discarded
which
toothbrush?
We use every day.
Yeah.
Your electronic waste, from computer keys, to materials like bottle caps. Yeah, so many
Bottles,
yes,
alcohol bottles, soft drinks,
yes,
all those kind of things.
yes.
Wow.
The list is actually endless. And in my recent show, I've expanded also my definition of everyday materials into things like tables. Even what we consume can be like maybe vegetables. In my recent show, you'd find rugare, kovo vegetables planted in the gallery. So I would see that just as everyday materials or consumables.
Moffat, we'll take a short break here. We'll be back, and when we get back, we will get into Moffat's amazing work. So please don't go away. See you on the other side.
I look at a kind of colonial hangover. You know, there are a lot of, I would call them maybe colonial residues.
Welcome back to our conversation with Moffat Takadiwa, a contemporary visual artist. So Moffat, just before we took a break, we were going through the materials that you use. Aerosol cans, spray bottles, toothbrushes, all discarded, including computer keys. Any particular reason why you go for these objects? Or it's just anything that is found that you then say, how do I make use of this garbage?
I would say there are a lot of narratives which I try to build around what's in the trash. What are we using? Sort of I would say maybe an archaeological kind of discovery, which is based on what was used. So I look or I observe carefully what we use as Zimbabweans. You know, it might be to a particular community or society or group of people. So I narrow down to maybe the questions like, why do we have like so many perfume cans in a dumping site? I've done a huge series of works just on perfume cans, because at some point we'd have like tons and tons of those in our garbage. So I might come up with stories like the works I've done, the smell of Harare, for instance. So these are also quite questioning, like, why do we need maybe materials which I regard as vanities in a society which is maybe struggling financially? Why are they buying like maybe so many nail polish and these perfumes and things like that? So it speaks to a certain narrative. Yes.
So your creative purpose, rather than your creative process, you don't set out to say, this is what I want to portray. You get to portray what the found material is asking you to portray. Is that what you do?
It's a mixture of both. Because as an artist, also, my work is based on research. I need to research from the artistries. I need to research the context. It might be of my country, because my work, you discover, speaks a lot about post-independent Zimbabwe and African countries. So I might pick narratives like what I call a colonial hangover, because these objects also speaks of trade, exchange, and maybe dominance in exchange. People maybe use certain brands because they've been introduced through what we call modernity or the West, the Coca-Cola and Colgate culture. You know, so it speaks about a lot of things, which feeds into my research, into what I want to talk about at that particular time, or what a certain society is going through.
It's interesting. I mean, as you're talking, I am reminded of what people say, that if you want to find out the lifestyle of your neighbors, go and look at what they throw away.
Exactly.
Isn't it? So you're doing that with the whole country, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Let's go to your pieces, which I absolutely I love them, and thank you for bringing this catalog and the story that's right there. But so let's start with. I'm going to walk through some of the pieces. Fascinating names, and you just tell us what you were thinking and what you're trying to portray. So the first piece that I chose was "Say Hello to English." What were you thinking? What were you trying to illustrate there?
So, as I've said, I look at a kind of colonial hangover. You know, there are a lot of, I would call them maybe colonial residues, you know, in how...
Like you and I speaking in English.
In English, how we maybe, myself as a born free, we become a generation which have received these foreign languages, I would say maybe unquestioningly, than other generations. You see, there were a lot of uprisings against languages in the history, including in South Africa. You know, a lot of people were killed just on demonstration against
June 16 in South Africa,
yes.
Against Afrikaans.
Yes. And you know, there are references also almost recent of a movement which was called the Rhodes Must Fall.
Yes.
Which was also based on language and people burning down libraries.
Symbols of colonialism and apartheid.
So people are kind of asking for African knowledge systems to be included in the mainstream, in the academia and other, you know. So I look at it from a perspective of, to start with a language. So because like Ngugi said, a language is a vehicle which carries culture. So I in that way, I used computer keys. And these are from a kind of old system of computer keys, which I think will represent that old administration, which I gathered. I destroyed the computer keyboards physically, and I removed the keys with a group of young people. So that becomes also an action of me mimicking maybe the Rhodes Must Fall movement. I'm destroying.
You're destroying
a certain system, and I'm
creating
out remains to create and fabricate maybe my own language. So these keys were placed randomly side by side, and they created a kind of fabrication which might look like maybe common reed mate, which we call bonde in my language. And the nature of fabrication itself speaks to a new language or an African knowledge system of a language where fabrication was not just weaving, but was meant also to notate or to record information. So it's a form of writing. Yes.
And a form of protest too.
Yes, exactly.
Then the other one that I read, I looked at this and I absolutely rolled out in laughter. Educated fools with the fools spelled Fulls. Educated fools. Talk to me about that piece.
If you look, they look like kind of gowns or some regalia. So I was also looking into how we parade ourselves as the most educated people maybe in the continent. But at the same time, we can't solve many problems in our backyards. So I was just, so these maybe themes and titles are just meant to provoke, to make people think and ask even more questions.
Educated fools. And then the Shonglish translator, particularly the detailed one. I like that. Talk to me about the Shonglish translator. Amazing piece of work.
Thank you. So, as I said, I would want to forge a possible language for the future. And we cannot deny our maybe colonial history, but somehow it has become part of our history. And Shonglish, you'll see, it's a mixture of
Shona in English.
Shona in English. So something like that. That was what I was playing with in that piece.
And then the one that got me absolutely spinning was Head Spin 2 and 7. What are you trying to tell us there?
Yeah, it's more like how I push my audience to ask questions, I would say to interrogate, to provoke. I provoke thoughts. So that's head spin for me. Yes. And I use the spray cans, nozzles kind of on that work.
And you did provoke my thinking. I found myself reflecting on issues that I would not ordinarily reflect on. And then the urinary.
The urinary. In the art history, there's this one very famous work called The Fountain. So this work, the artist just took the urinary and placed it in an exhibition. It became quite controversial. And for some people, it wasn't an artwork. It was just an everyday object. So that's how this using of everyday objects actually started. So that artist protested and said everything can be art. It depends on how you see it, where it's placed, and so on. So for me, the urinary was kind of questioning a lot of things to do with very controversial modern day issues, which are obviously coming from the West. We have issues of gender, we have issues of people who identify differently, and these are modern contemporary problems and issues. And I use the urinary as a place to start my conversation. In America, I discovered there are these urinaries or bathrooms which are for people who don't maybe conform to. So I'm just starting a conversation and asking my maybe modern day issues.
And the smell of foreign policy.
Yeah, a controversial one. Like I say, my work is meant to interrogate and ask those uncomfortable
questions.
Questions.
So what questions were you asking? Are you asking us with the smell of foreign policy?
In some of my works, rather much earlier works, I during my foraging for materials, there was so much of made in China labels, So that was during the time when we had those foreign policies. So I was just responding to that these policies may be leading us into influx of certain culture which is coming through, attached to certain objects also, which we use every day.
And you see these objects coming through. So nobody can say you're making this up, because you're seeing made in China, made in China, made in China.
Yes.
Smell of foreign policy.
Yes.
And the falling of Rhodesia.
That have to do with like the Rhodes Must Fall movement, which I spoke about earlier. And I like that in South Africa they were fighting the system, but you'd realize that in Zimbabwe at some point, this country was named after Cecil John Rhodes. So the Rhodesism lived really here in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And so this work was really talking about that, and that system, that also this system thrived through the language anyway. Rhodes was about the language, the English language.
You talk to me now. So those, this is we just tip of the iceberg in terms of the work that you do. We will share with our viewers most of the work as we take a tour around the National Art Gallery where your work is currently being displayed. When do these ideas manifest themselves? What is your creative process like? Is it when you're sleeping? Is it when you're walking? Talk to me about that space.
Sometimes it starts from research.
Okay.
So when I'm reading, then I come up with, I would say, many questions about maybe why certain things are happening the way they're happening. And I also look into the garbage a lot, and I ask also questions from that. So it's like intermarrying of the two, my research and what's in the garbage. I think that's how I
That's how you create.
These ideas.
Moffat will take a break here. Please don't go away. When we come back, we're going to share a story with you around Moffat's jacket. Moffat has received quite a number of awards. And by the way, Jay-Z bought one of his pieces. So don't go away for those amazing stories.
The art industry was built to somehow exclude us and was not built for us.
Imagine getting free access to the Newsday, the Standard, the Zimbabwe Independent, and the Weekly Digest for a full month. Well, you can, and all you need to do is download the Newsday e-reader app on Google Play Store or scan the Newsday QR code in any of the AMH print publications and start enjoying the quality content. Usasaririrewe, famba ne time, famba ne chokwadi, famba ne e-paper.
Welcome back to our conversation with Moffat Takadiwa. Moffat, you have taken your work throughout the world, like we said, and in doing so, Zimbabwe recognizing you. I read somewhere that you are actually Zimbabwe's most global contemporary artist. You have displayed your work in Johannesburg, in Tokyo, in Los Angeles. Where else have you taken your work? What's been the response like to your work?
My work have been shown in many institutions around the world, mostly American institutions, and in Europe, I've done many shows in many countries. I would say I work with a European gallery based in France, in Paris, called Semios Gallery, and another gallery in New York and in Los Angeles called Nicodem Gallery. So by the nature of my position of my galleries, it means I'm very much international. And they show me around the world. Like every maybe given month, I can be doing 3, 4, 5 shows around the world, different places.
So that means a lot of traveling.
Yes, yes.
And how much control do you have of your work with these galleries? Is it 100% control, or do you sign it over to an agent? How does it work?
Normally, galleries work, as you've put it, as agents. They just help in the studio.
Yeah.
They make the artists maybe better in terms of production, in terms of quality of the work. So they assist the artist in the studio, and they also help with the channels of distribution. They assist in placing of the works, because marketing artworks is different from many other products. They need to be very strategic on who collects the work, and they need to place it in important institutions, which also build a reputation for the artists, and they need to put all of that.
And they get a cut, and they get a percentage commission from your work.
Yes. Okay. Normally, commercial galleries take 50%.
50%?
Yes, they do a lot of work.
Wow. Yeah, because exposing you to the international markets and marketing your work, Okay. So for you, which one of these has been the most memorable? The places where you've taken your work, and why? Why would you say it's been the most memorable?
Yeah, there've been many occasions which were like really good for me. I remember when I did the Amory show in New York. Amory is the biggest art fair in America. For America, I know they have the Basel, but Amory is an American art fair which is big. It attracts almost 80 to 90,000 people in there, like 4 days running. So when I did the Amory, I was like one of the main highlights for the whole art fair, and I was in the New York Times in all important, I think, coverages for that whole week. You know, when you wake up, you're in almost every media and everybody's talking about you.
How does that feel like?
It's unfortunately it humbles you.
Do you like pinch yourself? Is this
Yeah,
really me?
Yeah.
Is this the guy from Murungwe?
Yes. It's like that. It's like that. And I would say also from your last question, you also asked, like you said I'm one of the most, I think,
Global Zimbabwean contemporary
I would
artists.
say actually there are many other Zimbabwean artists who are doing very well. So we are quite a big group of Zimbabwean artists.
Okay, can we name a number? A few that you
I would
that you'd
start
want to
by
honor?
naming Portia Zawahira. I know
Oh,
she's
yes.
trending.
She's just sold a piece for what? 200,000 US or something? 240,000.
200, almost 300,000. I think 290 or something at auction. But in terms of auction record with Zimbabwean artists, we have really.
Let's name them. So it's Portia Zawahira. If we can
Kudanai
remember.
Wami, she's almost going beyond 600,000 auction. So we have artists who are going towards $1 million at auction, actually, from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean young, actually, artist Kudanai, she's barely 30, you know. So we have many. We have Kudanai Churai also, who's a big name. We have Mishik Masamfu, we have Georgina Maxim, we have Gresham Tapiwa Nyaude, we have Gareth Nyandoro, who's also very big out there. We have Admire Kamzengre. We have many names. So Zimbabwe is really doing very well at the international.
What do you think explains that? Zimbabweans are doing well internationally. This man sitting here knows just a few that you've mentioned. Why is it that we are ignorant and we're not honoring people like you? How do you explain that?
To start with, our success is because of our situation, maybe at home. It forces us to really work hard. It's in its own a propelling force somehow, somewhere. So, and we need to also understand that the contemporary art market is growing. So we are coming from that backdrop of contemporary art. So contemporary art is a movement which is barely maybe 50 years. You know, after independence of many African countries, there was a cultural change and shift, and also the world, in a way, opened its doors to art from Africa. You'd realize that the art industry was built to somehow exclude us and was not built for us. So
But you're gate crushing and making headlines.
Yes. In the past 50 years, so we managed to really break, and African art started to really be recognized and still take center stage in making headlines in auctions, and we have African artists who are going beyond 6 million at auction and so on. So there is that growth coming from contemporary African art. And Zimbabwe also happened to be at the center of contemporary African art. We are really doing even much better than the giants like South Africa and Nigeria and also Kenya.
It speaks about us and our culture and our creativity, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Tell me, what is it that you think needs to be done in Zimbabwe by the government to make you guys even much more successful?
To start with, I think our government needs to realize that art is a big business for the country, for the entire country. I know some countries are beginning to realize that. Countries like Nigeria, they are realizing that agriculture and mining sometimes will not contribute as much as the cultural and the artistic sector or industry. So the government needs to change or adjust a lot of things. I'll give you an example of France, because I work in Paris. France is becoming an art capital. Paris is becoming an art capital from London. London used to be the art capital of Europe. But because London, Britain did the Brexit, so that changed the dynamics a little bit. So France took advantage of that. And Paris started to align its laws. You need to create an infrastructure. It might be banking infrastructure, which understands that people who collect and buy art, it's big money at play. When we talk about these millions of dollars,
for a piece,
people come with such money when you don't have working banks, when you don't have an infrastructure ready to receive that, when you don't have a system which recognizes me when I walk in the bank, they ask me, are you employed? And when I say I'm not, then they say, go and find someone who can vouch for you, or it's difficult for me to just even open a bank account to start with. So we need...
And this is Moffat.
Yes.
What about the other 10 that you're working with? If Moffat beckons to open a bank account, what about the other people that you're working with?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
What other things would you want the government to do to enable you? You're not asking them to give you, handouts, but to create an environment that is supporting you. What would you want them to do?
So still, I think it's to do with infrastructure, laws. We think of, even when we talk of customs, let's say, because we are talking of physical objects which needs to be shipped outside the country. When people are buying work, do we have laws which can make maybe the process much easier? Because we are also talking about competition in the region. Because when you want to grow as a country, you look at the region, you find favorable laws. It's either laws to do with when people buy cultural objects or artistic or leisure items. Because, still in the example of France, they produce a lot of fashion, perfumes, and so on. So artists also plays under leisure items. And they need to find ways which make people travel to just buy leisure items. So sometimes you see that people end up almost smuggling out the works because
of the difficult
clear, laws to guide how people can easily buy, sell, or bring in experts in the country. We might want to do a lot of workshops, to educate and to make sure that we have our younger and upcoming artists also have knowledge and so on.
Of the artists that you've just mentioned now, are all these working from Zimbabwe or they are now abroad?
I think that's what's unique also with Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Most of the successful Zimbabwean artists are based in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
They work from Zimbabwe. Although they are all represented in big galleries. Like we have artists represented even from David Zwina. These are like, David is like the top 2 gallery in the world, on earth. And we have Zimbabweans working with such. If you speak of South African galleries, all the top 10 galleries in South Africa, they have a superstar Zimbabwean artist.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Give me 5. Tell me now, you sold rather Jay-Z, the international musician, has one of your pieces. What piece is that? And how did the connection come about?
For almost 6-7 years now, I've been working with an American gallery based in Los Angeles and New York. So by the nature of my gallery, there are a lot of celebrities, I would say, who know of my work. Not only Jay-Z, so a lot of celebrities actually collects my work. It might be from movie stars to, musicians and so on. So they come through or they see the show. And the first connection with Jay-Z was Beyonce. So she wanted to have one of my work in her video. And that was maybe the first connection.
And how did the Beyonce connection come about?
I would say we Zimbabwean artists are doing very well. Like very well. Like we are actually known out there. So in LA, I'm not a secret as I am in Zimbabwe.
I like that.
So in LA, I'm actually.
So if I walk
known
around
as
with
an
you in
artist.
LA, I'm in good company, hey?
I think so. So I'm much known, and people know about my shows,
Yeah.
and many people can really come to see my exhibition, and
So what piece did Jay-Z get and Beyonce? What pieces did they get?
I think at first they were interested in a piece called Tengwe Farms. Yeah. So they ended up actually buying other
Pieces.
works, not just one,
Wow.
but several works.
Shall we talk about your jacket? I mean, my son, as we were coming in, was saying the person who makes these jackets only makes jackets to a select group of people. Talk to me about the jacket.
So the jacket is from a brand called Libertine, based in Los Angeles. That's Johnson Hattig, a good friend of mine. So he's one of the people.
Can I be your friend?
Yes. He follows my work, and we have known each other in Los Angeles, and I've visited his studios also so many times. And he end up saying, if you want, we can trade these for your works. So I have like almost 8 pieces from his collection, and he does this for top celebrities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you make us proud. You fly the Zimbabwean flag out there. Do you think we recognize the work that you do as Zimbabweans? As you're driving down Samora Machel and so forth, and you're looking at us, do you get a sense we appreciate you?
Good question. But I would say the good thing about visual art is it lives for a long time. So it might be that this generation maybe is not ready
For your work.
me, but still I know there will be another generation which will be more conscious about our culture, and they might dig deep to understand people who have also contributed in shaping and in building a narrative about us internationally. And so I know some more people, it might be maybe many years from now, I don't know.
And by that time, your work could be so expensive
I hope
to
so.
get hold of. Tell me, the people watching us from all over the world, in Zimbabwe, where should people go to go and look at your work? Where do we find your work?
I haven't been collected much in Zimbabwe, but I know the U.S. Embassy have collected, and actually the stories, they went the whole way to New York to actually buy my work and bring it back here. So they have a beautiful work there, and I've got a show running at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe. The show was extended. It was supposed to just be 1 month, so it's in its 2nd month.
Which is a good thing itself, isn't it?
Yes.
But you also have the Mbare space. Talk to me about that space.
The Mbare space is more like an extension of my work. So my work works with what we see as dead. This was a communal beer garden, which was dying from urban decay, and you know how most of these beer taverns are like. Some people using them as to put in tuck shops and so on. And so I noticed this beer tavern and talked to the city of Harare and say, we can do something with this. I know projects which I can come up with. And we managed to get a lease. And so I'm now changing this place into an art hub. It's in the center of a neighborhood in Bari, and I think it will really be an important space.
What are you planning to do with that space? What do you want to put into that space?
I think the first stages of what we are doing is we are involving architects. We are working with student architects also from Germany and from the US, from very prominent universities like Georgia Tech. And so
Georgia Tech.
Yes.
Okay.
So they are helping us to reimagine these spaces because still I see them as colonial residues. So by reimagining, we are thinking how these structures were built maybe to control young Black men and things like that. So how can we think of these structures which can accommodate maybe, let's say, everyone, women, kids, and people to come experience art. So at the end of the day, we'll have art, and artists using what we built as an art space. It might be a residence for artists and so on.
Wow. You've brought us this book. Where can people get this book? It's called Pleased to Meet You, Moffat Takadiwa. It's such a beautiful piece of work with your work in there. Can people buy this somewhere?
Unfortunately, maybe they can get it online. Unfortunately, I have only few copies. Yeah.
So I'm lucky to get a copy, eh? Where were you born? You were born in Urungwe, eh?
Yes,
Yeah.
In Tengwe.
Rural areas.
Yes. It's more like a farm. It was a small place surrounded by farms, and there was a few, maybe like a clinic, a police station, and a big supermarket where my father was working. So basically I was surrounded by farms.
And where did you go to school?
They had a small school there, and called Mushowe. So I went to Mushowe primary and secondary school. So yeah, I'm a boy from the farm.
Boy from the sticks.
Yes.
And from Mushowe, you then went to the Harare Polytechnic.
Yes.
What influenced that decision of going to the Harare Polytechnic? Had you already started to be creative?
From when I was very young, I think I was already stuck with this talent. I would say stuck because I've never done anything else
Except this.
and somehow I'm happy because my parents were pushing me, were happy with it, and were finding materials for me and things for me to use and say, keep going, that's what you love to do. So yeah, I was just doing what I love to do, and I ended up looking for a place where I can further develop my talent. That's how I came to know Harare Poly.
You're married with 4 kids, is it?
Yes.
4 children.
Yes.
Wow. Your parents, are they still alive?
They are.
They must be proud of you, eh?
They are, and they came to my show at the National Gallery. That was their first show.
Wow.
Actually, to see. Yes.
Wow. And what was their response?
I think they were overwhelmed because of the audience there. And, it was one of Zimbabwe's biggest show ever. And we had people flying in the country just to see the show. I had the whole team from my gallery in Paris. They came, my friends from the US. I know the former US American ambassador. His wife came also just for the show with people from South Africa and people. So it was like an important event, and yeah.
Well done. Well done. You make us proud. You make us proud. You are a national treasure. And I pray to God that the authorities watching the show realize that you and your colleagues who have pieces that go for $1 million, $240,000 plus, and many more, need to be nurtured. That we need to create an environment that enables more of you, talented, to showcase to the world what Zimbabweans are capable of. So we're very proud of you. Well done. Keep on doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Shall we talk about books? Let's share the books that you read with our audience out there. What books do you read? Do you recommend? Are there any books that you'd say, Trevor and the audience, if you want to understand art and what I do, go and read these books? I mean, this one is a good one. I'm going to be reading this one. Any other book recommendations?
For art, I would say there's a book written by Okwi, the late Okwi Enozo, a Nigerian writer, and Chika Okeke Agulu, called Contemporary African Art since 1980. I think, to me, is one of the most important books you can read about contemporary African art. I also read a lot from, Ngugi's Decolonizing the Mind, a lot of text from Mosaic Kore, and so on. So I read a lot. Yeah.
Fantastic. Moffat, I have been so excited to sit down and talk to you. And like I said, I'm kicking myself for not having known you until now. But then this is the beginning of a journey of us getting to know each other. And you are such an amazing, gifted, talented person. Your work is flying the Zimbabwean flag. Like I said, keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for creating the time to join us. Hey?
All right.
Thank you. All the best. We will take a walk around the National Art Gallery and have a deeper look at your work. Allow me, Moffat, to turn over to our viewers who are all over the world who follow this show on a weekly basis. Remember, we're out Mondays, Central African Time, 7 a.m. And to ensure that you don't miss out on none of these quality conversations like the one I've had with my brother Moffat here, please remember to click here, subscribe, like, and share. When you subscribe, you'll get a notification when we have one of these quality shows. We've gone a step further and put all our shows on our website. Go there where we have our podcasts for your listening pleasure. We see your comments, we see your suggestions. Keep them coming. And thank you for your support. Until next time, cheers to you all.